The sun was just beginning to set, casting a golden hue over the sprawling lawn of the Whitmore estate, where the annual family reunion was in full swing. Laughter echoed across the garden as relatives clinked champagne glasses and children chased each other between the tables draped in white linens. Music played softly in the background, and the scent of grilled meats and floral centerpieces filled the air. It was, on the surface, a picture-perfect event, elegance, wealth, and family pride on full display. In the center of it all stood Isabella, 8 months pregnant, quietly sipping water from a crystal glass as she tried to blend into the scene. Her smile was soft but uncertain, her presence tolerated but not quite welcomed. She hadn't seen most of her extended family in years, and although they greeted her politely, she felt the judgmental glances lingering just a little too long. Then, the microphone squealed. "Everyone, gather around," barked her cousin Miles, a smirk curling on his lips. "It's time for the family fun game. And guess who our special guest is?" Before she could react, Isabella felt hands gently but firmly guide her toward the makeshift stage at the front of the gathering. Her aunts giggled behind their hands. Her uncles avoided her gaze. "We wanted to celebrate our dear Isabella," Miles continued, "the brave black sheep who decided to grace us with her presence again." She was sat on a chair as someone began wrapping pink and blue ribbons around her arms. "Don't worry, it's just part of the game," they laughed. The crowd chuckled as someone held up a slideshow of edited baby photos, each with cruel captions. "Future dropout. Guess who the father is? From family pride to pity party." The laughter got louder. Phones were out, filming. Isabella's face burned. She said nothing. She didn't cry. She simply stared, her hands clenched in her lap as the mockery mounted. Then, sirens. Everyone froze as flashing red and blue lights flooded the estate. Tires screeched. Dozens of black-jacketed FBI agents burst in, shouting commands. Isabella didn't flinch. Because she knew this moment was coming. Isabella Whitmore had always been the pride of her family, on paper. From a young age, she had the posture, the grades, and the flawless charm that made her the perfect daughter in the eyes of high society. Born into wealth, she was raised in an environment where perfection wasn't just encouraged, it was demanded. Her family was old money, conservative to the core, and obsessed with appearances. Reputation was everything. Emotions were to be managed, not expressed. Mistakes? Simply not tolerated. By age 25, Isabella had graduated from an Ivy League school, spoke 3 languages, and had already made her debut in high society magazines as the young philanthropist of the Whitmore lineage. Her future, as her mother often reminded her, was secure. She was expected to marry someone of equal or greater status, preferably a man in finance or politics, produce heirs, and maintain the family's legacy with dignity. But something inside Isabella never quite fit into that mold. Her life took a dramatic turn the day she met Noah Reed, a sharp-minded but quietly rebellious software engineer who had worked for one of the most powerful tech corporations in the country, a company with deep investment ties to the Whitmore family. Their connection was instant, electric even. Noah didn't care about her family name or designer dresses. He listened to her when she spoke, saw through the surface and into the woman underneath the perfection. They fell in love, quickly, intensely, and to her family's horror, recklessly. Then came the scandal. Noah, in the course of his work, uncovered a disturbing pattern of corporate espionage and illegal surveillance, implicating not only the company but several of its wealthy investors, including members of the Whitmore family. Instead of staying quiet, Noah did the unthinkable. He blew the whistle. Within days, headlines exploded. The Whitmores scrambled to do damage control, denying involvement, distancing themselves from Noah and Isabella. But she didn't fold under the pressure. She stood beside him, even when her father called it a career-ending disgrace, and her mother wept as though mourning a death. For Isabella, the choice was clear: love and truth over legacy and lies. The family disowned her. She and Noah went into hiding, not in fear of physical danger, but to escape the media frenzy and regain control of their lives. They moved from state to state, quietly building a new beginning. Noah began working with federal investigators, while Isabella worked remotely and kept mostly off the grid. The solitude was lonely at times, but it was real. And for the first time in her life, she felt free. Then, the news that would change everything. She was pregnant. When Isabella told Noah, he held her hands and kissed her forehead. It was a moment of pure joy, something untouched by their past. But the world outside saw it differently. When word reached her family, through a leak or a snooping relative, the backlash was immediate and brutal. Her pregnancy wasn't seen as a new beginning, it was a betrayal of blood. Another public scandal. A disgrace. They tried to reach her. Not with warmth or apologies, but veiled threats, demands, and one too many passive-aggressive messages. They told her she'd ruined her future, that she was alone, that she'd be back begging. But she didn't. Then came the unexpected invitation, a formal card, handwritten, sealed with the Whitmore crest. We would love to have you at the family reunion. Let the past be the past. Come home. Noah was skeptical. It's a setup, he warned. But Isabella, after long contemplation, looked at her swollen belly and said, maybe it's time to face them. One last time. And so, for the first time in years, she agreed to return. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't just be a reunion. The envelope arrived on a gray Tuesday morning, tucked neatly among bills and a baby product catalog. Isabella turned it over in her hands, immediately recognizing the smooth ivory paper and elegant gold embossing of the Whitmore family crest. Her breath caught. She hadn't seen that symbol in over 2 years, not since the scandal, not since her parents had publicly disavowed her for standing by Noah. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a folded card with a handwritten note from her mother. Dearest Isabella, we've all had time to reflect. It's been too long, and we regret how things ended. The family reunion is next Saturday. We would love to see you again. Come home. We miss you. No threats. No passive aggression. Just warmth. A genuine olive branch, it seemed. Isabella sat in silence for a long while, staring at the card. It was strange. It felt too easy. Too smooth. But also, maybe it was sincere? Maybe, with the baby almost due, her mother had finally softened. Maybe time had healed the wound. Later that evening, she showed the card to Noah. He read it silently, jaw clenched. No. She looked up. No. No. Bella, you know this is bait. It's too polished, too calculated. They haven't called, haven't messaged, haven't shown an ounce of remorse in 2 years. And suddenly they're all forgiveness and nostalgia. She sighed, gently placing her hand over her round belly. But what if it's not? What if this is the first step to fixing things? For the baby's sake. Noah rubbed the back of his neck. He didn't want to crush her hope, but the risk gnawed at him. I don't trust them. But, if you feel you need to go, I won't stop you. Just, don't go alone. I'll drive you there and wait nearby. So it was decided. On the day of the reunion, Isabella dressed in a soft lavender maternity dress and a light cream coat. Her hair was braided simply, her face fresh. She looked radiant, but her heart was thumping with a mixture of hope and dread. As the car pulled up to the estate gates, memories flooded her. Childhood summers on this lawn, Christmas dinners in the grand hall, garden parties where she danced barefoot on the grass. It felt so distant now. Like it had happened in someone else's life. I'll be 10 minutes away, Noah said as she stepped out. You call me for anything. I mean it. She nodded, kissed his cheek, and walked toward the entrance. To her surprise, the reception was warm. Her mother hugged her tightly, eyes glassy with emotion. Her father offered a stiff handshake, but didn't look away in disgust. Cousins and aunts beamed, complimented her dress, touched her belly with awkward delight. There were even apologies, thinly veiled, but present. I can't believe how grown-up you look, her Aunt Marian said. And glowing. It's really good to see you again, her brother murmured. We missed you. Isabella allowed herself to smile. Maybe she had been wrong to worry. Maybe this was a turning point. But soon, cracks began to show. She caught glances exchanged when she walked by. Conversations stopped when she approached. Her father's voice lowered to a whisper every time he spoke to her uncles. Someone had clearly added, "The prodigal daughter returns," to the party's slide presentation. Her cousin Miles kept offering her drinks, smirking when she declined. The hugs were hollow. The smiles, forced. Aunt Marianne's tone shifted slightly after her second glass of wine. "So, you still with that hacker boy? Or are you ready to grow up now?" The trap hadn't closed yet, but Isabella could feel it tightening. She glanced toward the driveway in the distance. Noah's car was parked somewhere out of sight, engine probably running, ready for anything. She straightened her shoulders, placed her hand on her belly, and smiled again, this time with caution. Because deep down, she knew, they hadn't changed at all. Dinner was winding down as the sun disappeared completely behind the hills. The estate's back garden had transformed into an ambient wonderland of twinkling fairy lights, jazz music, and crystal glasses chiming over soft laughter. Guests settled into their chairs around the grand fire pit. Servants whisked away plates. In the distance, the sound of cicadas mixed with the distant clinking of silver cutlery. Isabella sat at a table near the edge, sipping ginger tea, her hand resting protectively over her baby bump. Despite the earlier tension, she'd begun to feel a strange sense of comfort, or maybe cautious relief. No one had shouted at her. There had been no dramatic confrontations. If this was the extent of her family's displeasure, she could handle it. Maybe this really was a new chapter. Then came the announcement. Her cousin Miles tapped a spoon against a glass and grinned from the center of the gathering. "All right, everyone. Before dessert, we have a little surprise for our favorite cousin Isabella." A light round of applause followed. Isabella blinked. "Surprise?" she asked her mother, who smiled and patted her hand. "Oh, just a bit of fun. You'll love it." Isabella hesitated. Her instincts twitched, but she stood up slowly, adjusting her coat over her belly as she followed Miles toward the stage at the center of the lawn. A few guests took out their phones. Others whispered and giggled as she passed. "Go ahead, Bella. Take a seat." Miles gestured to a padded chair on stage, decorated with pastel blue and pink baby shower ribbons. There was even a bow tied across the backrest. She chuckled nervously. "What is this?" "You'll see." Miles winked. As she sat, two of her younger cousins came forward and, before she could react, began loosely tying ribbons around her wrists and arms, securing them to the chair's arms. Laughter erupted from the crowd. "What are you?" "Relax, it's symbolic," one cousin said. "It's just to keep you from running away again." The crowd howled. Isabella forced a smile, her lips tightening. Something was wrong. The stage darkened. A projector flickered on behind her. A slideshow appeared on the white screen, photos of her from childhood, funny, innocent moments. Then teen years, some awkward, some elegant. Then college. Then the photos shifted. One showed her walking with Noah, a tabloid headline imposed over it, "Heiress in hiding with hacker boyfriend." Laughter. Another photo, Isabella at a gas station during her pregnancy, in sweats and no makeup. The caption read, "From high society to food stamps?" Louder laughter. Her hands tightened against the ribbons. One by one, family members took turns grabbing the mic. They each shared a funny memory that turned into a veiled jab. "I remember when Bella thought she could save the world by dating a criminal. Isn't that adorable?" her uncle joked. "Who knew rebellion could look so bloated?" her cousin Marianne added. "Oh, sorry, I mean glowing." Laughter again. Applause. Whistles. A slideshow continued, photos clearly pulled from private sources, manipulated and twisted into a narrative of shame. Fake stories. Mocking commentary. Isabella's smile had vanished. Her eyes scanned the crowd. They were laughing. Some nervously, others with cruel enthusiasm. A few looked down, uncomfortable, but said nothing. No one stopped it. Not her brother. Not her aunts. Not even her mother. Then her father stepped forward. His tailored suit gleamed under the lights as he adjusted the mic. "For years," he began, voice cold and clear, "we've stood by silently as our daughter turned her back on her family. On her legacy. On everything we built." Isabella's heart pounded. Her hands trembled under the ribbons. "We tried to be understanding. We sent messages, we begged her to come home. But she chose him. She chose scandal. She chose shame." He gestured toward her with disgust. "She embarrassed us. Shamed us. Lied about us in the press. But tonight, we reclaim our story. We show the world who she really is." The crowd clapped. And then, chaos. The clapping was drowned out by the sharp blare of sirens. Red and blue lights flashed across the garden. Guests turned in shock. A booming voice shouted, "FBI! Nobody move." Doors slammed open from multiple directions. Dozens of agents in bulletproof vests and jackets bearing the bright yellow FBI letters swarmed the area. They moved quickly, efficiently, shouting commands and drawing weapons. Screams erupted. Glasses shattered. Guests ducked, stunned into silence. Cell phones dropped. Isabella sat perfectly still, her face calm now, stone-cold calm. One of the agents moved directly toward her. "Miss Whitmore?" he asked. She nodded. "Are you safe?" She glanced at the stunned crowd, then slowly replied, "Yes. Now I am." Behind her, her father's face turned ashen. "What is this?" he shouted. "This is private property." Another agent approached him. "Marcus Whitmore, you are under investigation for conspiracy to commit fraud, corporate espionage, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice." More agents moved into the crowd, detaining others. Her cousin Miles was wrestled to the ground. Her uncle tried to flee and was pinned near the wine table. Screams and crying echoed through the once serene garden. Noah appeared at the edge of the chaos, sprinting toward the stage. He untied Isabella's ribbons gently, his eyes fierce but proud. "You did it," he whispered. She stood, straightened her dress, and looked out at the disarray. The woman they had mocked, humiliated, and underestimated, had turned the tables completely. The garden, once alive with soft music and fake smiles, erupted into chaos. "FBI!" Everybody on the ground, hands visible. Guests screamed. Champagne glasses shattered on the concrete patio as men in black jackets and tactical gear flooded the lawn. The sharp blare of sirens pulsed against the elegant string music that had been playing only moments before. Confusion reigned. Isabella, still tied to the chair with baby shower ribbons, looked calmly toward the chaos as two agents rushed toward her. "Isabella Whitmore?" one agent asked firmly. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady. "We've got her," he called into a radio. He and another officer quickly but gently untied her, covering her with a tactical jacket and positioning themselves protectively on either side. That's when Noah appeared. He entered with a second wave of agents, wearing a determined expression and carrying a thick black folder marked with red tabs. His eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on Isabella, safe and alert. She gave him a faint nod. He exhaled, relief and resolve pouring from his body. Across the lawn, her father, Marcus Whitmore, was shouting angrily, "This is a mistake. I demand to speak to your supervisor. You have no right." But the lead agent, a tall woman with steely eyes, stepped forward and held out a warrant. "Marcus Whitmore, you are under federal investigation for conspiracy to commit corporate fraud, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. You are under arrest." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Her uncle Gregory was tackled near the bar, yelling curses. Her cousin Miles was already face down on the patio, wrists cuffed behind him. Guests watched, horrified, as their hosts, the pillars of their community, were apprehended by federal agents like common criminals. A few tried to slip away quietly. Others dropped to their knees with hands in the air, fearing they too were implicated. The lead agent turned toward the crowd. This reunion was under federal surveillance for several months. We have reason to believe that criminal meetings were being planned in coordination with this event. No one is to leave until we complete the sweep. Noah climbed onto the edge of the small stage, holding up the folder. These documents detail years of illegal corporate activity, including money laundering, insider trading, and illegal surveillance, some of it targeting employees and whistleblowers. He looked directly at Marcus. You thought you buried the truth. But you didn't erase the paper trail. Someone whispered from the crowd. Wait. Isabella knew. All eyes turned toward her. She stepped forward, calm, collected, and untouchable. Yes, she said. I knew. And I chose to walk back into this house to end it. More gasps. A woman dropped her wineglass in disbelief. I knew you'd try to humiliate me, Isabella continued, her voice now strong and unwavering. I knew you couldn't help yourselves. So I let you. She looked around at the same people who had laughed at her earlier. I endured your jokes, your cruelty, even your staged little game. Because I needed you to be exactly who you are, on record, in public. I needed witnesses. I needed cameras. One of the agents nodded toward a tree line. We had visual surveillance and audio the entire time. Every word was recorded. Every insult. Every admission. Isabella's mother stepped forward, stunned. You set us up? No, Isabella replied. You set yourselves up. I just gave you the stage. The agents began leading the arrested men toward the front gates, where black SUVs awaited. Reporters had already begun to gather, tipped off by a leak from within the investigation team. Flashbulbs erupted. The elegant garden was now a crime scene, crawling with law enforcement and media personnel. Isabella watched as her father was escorted away. He looked over his shoulder at her, furious, betrayed, small. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like the disappointment. She felt powerful. Noah came to her side, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. You were incredible, he whispered. She looked up at him, eyes burning with unshed tears. I just did what had to be done. They stood together as the agents worked through the crowd, interviewing, collecting devices, issuing warnings. The humiliation she had endured wasn't fake. It wasn't rehearsed. It had been real. Every jab, every taunt, every sneer had cut deep, but it had all served a purpose. Justice. Because when no one else would expose the rot inside her family, she had. And now the whole world would see them, not as socialites or business moguls, but as criminals, frauds, manipulators. Isabella wasn't the disgraced daughter anymore. She was the one who'd burned the empire down, and walked away stronger. 3 weeks before the family reunion, Isabella sat quietly in the back booth of a cafe 2 towns over, her hands wrapped around a lukewarm mug of tea she hadn't touched. Across from her sat 2 federal agents in plain clothes, their faces serious, their tones careful. Miss Whitmore, one said gently, we know this is a lot to take in. They slid a thick file across the table. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside were financial documents, emails, wire transfers, all tied to Whitmore Enterprises. Her family's empire. But what made her blood run cold was a page near the middle. An offshore account. Under her name. This can't be real. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm afraid it is, the second agent said. Your name was used without your consent to launder money through a network of fake charities and shell corporations. And, the first added, one of the newest accounts is under the name of your unborn child. Isabella's hands trembled. She couldn't speak. She could hardly breathe. Her baby, used as cover for white-collar crime. Her family had betrayed her in the most personal, vile way. Thousands have been hurt, the agent continued. Stolen pensions. Medical records hacked. Displaced workers. This isn't just a family squabble, it's criminal on a national scale. At first, she refused. She walked out, tears in her eyes. The idea of helping the FBI bring down her own family felt too much, too painful. But she couldn't stop thinking about that name. Her child's name, written on dirty money. They had gone too far. So, 2 days later, she called them back. "I'll help," she said into the phone, her voice stronger than she felt. "But I have one condition. I want to be there. I want to see them fall." The agents didn't hesitate. Done. From that moment, Isabella became more than a whistleblower. She became the centerpiece of a sting operation. They gave her a hidden mic. They coached her on legal traps to watch for: phrases, behavior, indirect admissions. She sat through hours of debriefings, relived childhood memories she'd buried, and let go of the hope that her family would ever change. But the hardest part: planning to return to them, knowing exactly what they would say, how they'd mock her, belittle her, laugh at her tears, and still walking in. Every step she took toward that reunion was a step into the fire. But she did it anyway. She wore a flowing maternity dress that concealed the mic sewn into her bra strap. She smiled at the gates when she arrived, kissed her mother's cheek, laughed at her cousin's terrible joke, all while agents listened from unmarked vans parked half a mile away. She watched the trap close slowly around her family, and they never saw it coming. But what surprised everyone the most was her resolve. The lead agent later told his team, "She's the toughest person I've ever worked with." She endured the game, the stage, the mocking, the ribbon, the shame, all of it, because she had made a choice: to protect her child, to stand up for the people her family had hurt, to make things right. No one forced her. She chose this path, not out of revenge, but out of purpose. Isabella didn't see herself as brave. Not then. She still cried quietly that night in her hotel room, holding her belly, whispering apologies to her unborn child for what they'd gone through. But when she walked into that reunion, she walked in with her head high, her shoulders straight, and her heart hardened with purpose. She would break the cycle. She would end the lies. And when the FBI stormed in, it wasn't just justice, it was her victory. Because she was no longer the obedient daughter. She was the woman who brought the truth to light, and stood tall in the fire to do it. Handcuffs clicked shut one after another as the sun dipped lower over the estate, casting long shadows across a once picturesque reunion now turned crime scene. Marcus Whitmore, patriarch of the Whitmore family, stood red-faced and trembling as 2 federal agents flanked him. One read his rights calmly and clearly, while the other tightened the cuffs around his wrists. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say." "This is a mistake," he shouted, cutting the agent off. "I built this empire. I made this family what it is. That ungrateful little..." His words were cut short as he was escorted toward the black SUV waiting at the curb. Just steps away, Isabella's mother, Lillian, collapsed into a chair on the patio, her perfectly styled hair falling into her face as tears streaked her mascara. "She did this," she sobbed. "Isabella. She turned on her own blood." A camera crew from a local news station caught it all. In another corner of the estate, Isabella stood surrounded by a group of reporters. Her eyes were tired but clear, her back straight, her hands gently resting on her belly. The microphones pointed toward her like weapons, but she didn't flinch. "I didn't betray my family," she said steadily. "I stopped them from betraying thousands more." The quote echoed across news outlets by the hour's end. It appeared on news tickers, in headlines, and was retweeted tens of thousands of times. Standing beside her, Noah placed a protective hand on her shoulder. He didn't speak, he didn't have to. His presence said everything. By nightfall, footage of the FBI storming the estate had gone viral. Drone footage showed agents pouring into the property. Aerial shots captured Marcus being placed into a police vehicle. Clips of Isabella's game, the chair, the cruel jokes, the ribbons, played on talk shows and YouTube reaction videos. Viewers were outraged. "She's a hero," one commentator said. "She knew what they'd do to her, and she let it happen, for justice." But not everyone praised her. Inside the Whitmore circle, anger festered. Her cousin Miles, cuffed and furious, screamed, "She trapped us. She's been working against us for months." One uncle spat on the ground as he was led away. "Rot in hell, Isabella." Other relatives sat in stunned silence. A few shook their heads. One elderly aunt whispered, "Good for her. About time someone stood up to them." The extended family was fractured. Lines were drawn. Some publicly condemned her. Others quietly applauded. But Isabella didn't care about sides anymore. She had picked the only one that mattered, the truth. The fallout continued over the next several days. Court documents were unsealed, revealing decades of fraud, falsified documents, offshore laundering, and corrupt political ties. Marcus and 2 brothers were indicted on multiple counts of conspiracy, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. Bail was denied. Their empire, once a powerful business conglomerate, was now in shambles. Investors fled. Stockholders sold off. The company's name was dragged through every major media outlet. Meanwhile, Isabella and Noah, now in a secure location, prepared for the legal battles ahead, but this time, they were on the right side of the courtroom. Isabella held a press conference from a quiet garden at a law office downtown, choosing her words with care. "My child's name was used to fund criminal activity. My own identity was exploited for financial gain. I endured shame and humiliation to bring that to light, not for revenge, but because silence is complicity. And I will never be silent again." Her calm, firm statement was hailed as one of the most powerful moments in a corporate whistleblower case. Noah, by her side, later told reporters, "She risked everything. And she never flinched." Back at the estate, silence fell. The once lively Whitmore mansion sat empty, frozen in time, with half-eaten catering trays and discarded champagne flutes still littering the yard. The legacy of the Whitmore name now lay buried beneath indictments and scandal, but a new legacy was being born. One of truth. One of courage. And one written by a woman who refused to let power protect corruption, not even her own blood. The air was crisp the morning Grace Whitmore was born. A soft spring breeze drifted through the hospital window as Isabella cradled her newborn daughter against her chest. The pain of labor had passed, replaced by a serenity she hadn't felt in years. She named her Grace, not just for the elegance of the word, but for what it represented. The grace it took to endure betrayal. The grace it took to survive humiliation, public judgment, and the shattering of her own bloodline. Most of all, the grace to forgive herself for ever believing she was weak. Noah stood by her side, his eyes moist with quiet awe. For all the battles they had fought, for justice, for truth, for their family, this moment was their reward. Months passed, and the chaos faded into the rearview mirror. With court proceedings behind them and the media frenzy dying down, Isabella and Noah moved to a peaceful lakeside town hours from the city. It wasn't grand, but it was quiet. Safe. Free. There, Isabella began writing her memoir, The Family Name. Page by page, she unpacked the years of pressure, secrets, and generational trauma. But it wasn't a tale of destruction. It was a story of reclamation. Of finding strength not in legacy, but in integrity. Alongside her writing, Isabella launched a non-profit bearing her name. Its mission was clear: to protect and empower whistleblowers and survivors of family-based emotional abuse. Her story had inspired thousands, and now she was giving them the tools to speak, fight, and rise, just as she had. On the anniversary of the infamous reunion, a journalist visited her for a follow-up interview. Sitting on her porch, Grace in her arms and Noah at her side, Isabella spoke softly but firmly. "I was humiliated, but I rose. I was mocked, but I mattered." The quote went viral again. But this time, it wasn't attached to scandal. It was a symbol of healing, of growth, of strength reborn. And in that peaceful town, under golden skies and far from judgment, Isabella finally found what her family never gave her: peace. One quiet morning, as sunlight streamed through the curtains, Isabella found a plain, white envelope slipped under her door. The handwriting was unmistakable, her father's. With steady hands, she broke the seal and unfolded the single sheet inside. The message was brief but heavy with menace. "You've won the battle. But the war isn't over." Her eyes lingered on the words, absorbing their chilling weight. No apologies. No remorse. Just a cold warning. For a moment, silence hung in the room like a storm about to break. Then, with a calm that surprised even herself, Isabella rose and walked to the fireplace. She held the letter over the flickering flames. As the paper curled and blackened, a voiceover began, soft but resolute. "You can't shame someone who already knows her worth." The screen faded slowly to black, leaving the final message echoing in the hearts of those watching. Isabella's journey wasn't just about justice. It was about reclaiming power. And nothing, not even her father's threats, could take that away.